Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our series of episodes on Shah Waliullah Dehlawi. To understand Shah Waliullah Dehlawi is quite a lot of intellectual labor, a lot of work is required, because of course, as I've mentioned previously, he's taking from many streams of thought. If you want to think about it in broad terms, from different theological schools, different legal schools, different mystical traditions. So he's a real, what we call in French, a bricolier. A bricolier is someone who takes from different traditions, from different places, and he combines them and produces something quite unique. So he's borrowing, but he's producing something unique. Not quite plagiarism. Plagiarism is taking someone's work and copying it without acknowledging their contribution. But if you read Shah Waliullah, you can see where he's coming from. So I'm going to try over the next few episodes to take you on a journey which will help you to understand Shah Waliullah and the scholars and the ideas that came before him a little bit more clear for you, God willing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at someone that he read clearly was someone by the name of Ibn Arabi. Because we're talking about wujud and the questions of existence, I want to reflect on what I would call seeing the one in the many. And this is Ibn Arabi's view of what's called existence. And this is a clear central metaphysical concept. This idea is often linked with Ibn Arabi, what's called Wahdat al-Wujūd, or the oneness of being. Now, Ibn Arabi himself didn't call it this. This came later on from his students and people who came after him. But this idea of the oneness of being called Wahdat al-Wujūd. Now, he doesn't explicitly say that, Ibn Arabi, and he doesn't use the phrase itself. But the idea, let's say, permeates his philosophy. Wujud, you can translate here as being or finding. It's understood in its highest form as the absolute, and I want to make this very, very clear, as the absolute unbounded reality of God, what we would call the necessary being, the sole true existence. I'm going to repeat that for you again. Wujud here is understood as the highest form, as the absolute unbounded reality of God, what's called the necessary being, as the sole true existence. Everything else besides God, if you like, what Ibn Arabi would call the cosmos, or everything else other than God, exists really only in a secondary or dependent or metaphorical sense. That's what Ibn Arabi would say if you're reading his work. So the objects that we observe around us in the world are not truly existent in themselves, but are points of what we would call divine manifestation, tajalli, a word I will come back to in future episodes. So everything else is a point of divine manifestation, and we only exist, and everything exists out there as a secondary wujud, through which God's being shines. So everything shines because of God's being. It's a bit like the colors through which light becomes visible. So you can imagine through which the colors, the different hues and the colors you see around you, through which light becomes visible, but are not in themselves light. So that's one way of, I suppose that's an analogy. It's like colors are visible through light, but are not themselves light. Ibn Arabi obviously argues that multiplicity is not an illusion, and sometimes people oversimplify his doctrine, but rather a true expression of divine reality. So multiplicity, everything that we see around them, is a true expression of divine reality. And this gets a little bit complex, but I keep it simple. This multiplicity is what's called, it's rooted in what he would call the immutable entities, which are eternal, non-existent archetypes known to God in his timeless knowledge, in his ilm. And these entities are never alter, but become manifest in the world through the divine breath of the All-Merciful, which is God's outpouring of existence from non-existence into being. So these things manifest from Adam al-Wujūd to exist, from non-existence to existence. And these metaphors of light are very, very useful, because if we think about using metaphors as light going through a colored glass or a breath forming words, Ibn Arabi illustrates how the one, Wujud, the one God, manifests as the many, the cosmos, without losing its essential unity. This relationship, by the way, is non-dual. Things are, as they say, he and not he, huwa la huwa. They are both God and not God, manifesting divine names while remaining distinct in their essence. This is part of the broader ontology of Ibn Arabi, through which he understands through the divine names. Importantly, this perspective of his does maintain God's incomparability, what we call tanzih, and tashbih, God's similarity, which embraces a paradox, if you like, as a means to attaining deeper understanding. In conclusion for this episode today, Ibn Arabi's metaphysics highlights that while all things are the signs of God, only truly in reality God exists. The cosmos is real, not in it of itself, but in so far as it reflects and reveals the one being God. So more to come soon. As you can see, we're taking the question of God very, very seriously, and I'm hoping you're doing the same. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.